Okay, how do I tell? All right, there's number of viewers. There's everything. Okay, so here's hoping I can paint like this, huh? Doop, doop, doo. Alrighty, I think that's probably good on audio. Hello, hello, hello. Yep. Alrighty, I'm gonna have to find out if people can hear me or not. I am not sure, but hopefully this is working. So we're gonna go ahead and start on this guy. We've got just a few details to wrap up on him. And then we will hit up some OSL. Hey, Mama has a mini addiction. I like it. I think we all kind of have mini addictions, right? I mean, can you paint minis and not be addicted? I don't think so. If you got questions, I will try to answer them. I'll kind of go over what we're going to do here today, and I will show you some of the supplies we're going to use, some of the paints we're going to use, and then yeah, we'll tackle it. So we got this ogre guy here. This is from a 3D printable Kickstarter coming up. He is a fantastic piece. I really love the character in these ogres. You know, we've done some pretty realistic skin tones. I think they are at least realistic skin tones here. Um, you can see we've got some nice purples and reds in the shadows, a little bit of yellows and ivories in the highlights. I'm happy with the skin. You can see on the face here, we've done kind of a gray tone here. This usually represents kind of the stubble effect that a guy would have. So, what's next? Well, we've got to hit all this fur, this kind of gray fur. We're going to brighten that way up. We've got to do the chain here. We're going to do that as some nice non-metallic metal, hopefully. Hey, Loim 1977. We got to finish up the chain, the fur, these little bits and doodads up here on the neck. Thank you. And then after that, really the main thing after that is going to be the spear. We're going to make it glow. The overwhelming majority in the vote was green, so we're going to use a nice fluorescent green. And we'll kind of show how we do that. The way that I do OSL, that kind of has to be the last step. We kind of plan for it throughout the rest of the mini, but the actual OSL kind of needs to be the very last step. It's airbrush. You can do it other ways, but it's much easier if you have an airbrush. What kind of paints we're going to use? Most of the skin tones here are Reaper. They were the bronze series. So we got bronze highlight, bronze shadow, and a bronze skin. There's some additional ivory in the highlights. And then some of the shadow also has, this is a Createx transparent purple. So this is really cool because if you take an airbrush or even glaze it real thin, if you just come in and just hit from this under angle, you're just going to create all these really nice shadows without covering any of your highlights. And you're just going to end up with a really smooth blend, super easy, that looks great. There's not a lot of work in the skin. You can see here on this guy that this side of the shoulder is a little bit brighter. We're actually going to be brightening that up a little bit more before we do it. And the reason is when we do this OSL, we want this side to be a little bit brighter because it's going to come down. And this green that we're going to spray is transparent. We'll cover that a little bit more, but that's part of it. I'm using a Raphael 8404 size 1 brush. I'm going to use that pretty much for everything we do here. I've got a hobby holder um, uh, mini holder. They are fantastic. I love them because you can just switch things off so easy, but it holds everything super secure. Yeah, I mean, the you really can't go wrong with the 8404s. They're lovely brushes. They hold just a great point. We're also going to be using some of the Monument Pro Acryl paints. These are fantastic. They go down super smooth. You can thin them just crazy amounts if you want to do glazes. They're one of the best paints all around. And then we're going to throw in a little bit of, this is watercolors. We're not going to do a whole lot with this time, but this stuff is great for glazing and a little bit of wet blending sometimes if you do that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to tackle the fur first, and we're just going to kind of highlight we're going to build up the highlights here. So we've gone really dark, but we're going to end up really light. So I'm not sure how many layers we're going to do. We're just going to do it until I feel like it feels right, which is kind of how I do everything. So some people are like, "Did you do 3 layers on that?" I'm like, I couldn't even begin to tell you. I promise you, it's more than 3 usually, but it's not going to be a lot. Can everybody hear me fine? Is my audio good? Is everything looking fine? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, I'm going to assume it's a bit tinny. Okay, well, I will tackle that for next time. Okay, I will go back and listen to it and see what we can see. So you can see I got some paint on here. I didn't thin it a whole lot. You really don't need to, especially with let me get that a little better in view. There we go. You don't need to thin the Pro Acryls a lot. You can, but you really don't need to. I got some on my brush, and then some painters don't do this, but I'm a big fan. Really, I find you need to dab a little bit off, almost always, because otherwise your brush just ends up super loaded, and then when you go to touch the model, it just goes everywhere. So at this point now, we're just going to start coming in here, and we're just going to start hitting mostly the top. It's not going to be dramatic to start off with here. So we're just trying to catch mostly where the lights are. I'm going to try to stay on camera, guys. I'm not super used to painting on camera, so it's kind of a skill you have to develop, especially being, um, yeah, especially when you're not used to it there. So you can, if you've got any questions about how something's already been done, feel free to let me know. I'm hoping we can get to the OSL in, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 minutes, maybe. When you're doing these kind of fur and hair and anything like this, one of the things you don't want to try to do is to paint every piece of fur. It is not going to come out well. It will not look right. You will not like the results. I'm a little off camera. I'm going to back this up just a little bit, give myself a little more room. Oops. Hopefully that's right. We'll see. That's great. Yeah. What are you painting? Darth Molinex. Okay. So like I said, we're just going back over the tips here. And the next point we're going to see will be much different as far as the transitions go here. But what we don't want to do is go too bright too fast. I think that's the reason a lot of people get scared of actually painting super bright, is that if you go too bright too fast, then the transitions look really stark. And somebody's like, oh my gosh, that looks so chalky. Or, somebody will say, well, it doesn't blend together well then. And you know what? They're 100% right. If all you do is go from, oh, secret project, that's fun. If all you do is go from painting, a mid-tone up to a stark white, then yeah, it's going to look like crap. White is super opaque, y'all. Like it's one of the most opaque things. And so what happens is whenever you add just a little bit of white to something, it goes a long way. And so because of that, you have to be very careful when you do brighter colors that you go up very, very slowly. All right, so we've done one. Thanks. I'm glad the video's looking good. All righty, so now what we've done is that was Monument Pro Curl Dark Gray. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of our bright warm gray. And we're going to put that down, and you'll see I'm not going to add very much of this at all to this. All right, so I put a little bit down there, and all we're going to do is we're going to add just see that little bit there, and we're just going to take just a little bit. There we go. That's all I'm going to do for that. And it's going to be a pretty subtle change here, but it's going to be, and all we're trying to do is just cover a little bit less and mainly stay to the areas that are going to be the lighter colors. If we get a little bit on the skin or something, it's not a big deal. It's fur, so it can bleed over a little bit. You know, you pretend that that's a little bit of fur that's on his skin. That's not necessarily the end of the world here. So yeah, we're working our way up, and then when we get to the very maybe last one or two highlights, that's when we'll start to pick out some individual pieces. When we'll say, you know what, now we'll start to give it more texture. If we do that right away, it's just going to look like a hot mess, y'all. It's going to be like craziness. Rhonda Bender covered this particular tip on her Reaper video. And it's kind of crazy because it was something that I'd really been thinking about lately. Like I struggled with painting hair for a long time. Like just never looked right. It always looked like a bunch of random stray minis or random stray hairs instead of like a group of hair. And everybody's like, "Oh, all you got to do is go look at a hair color box." I'm like, "Great." I go look at a hair color box, and I'm like, "I don't know what I'm looking at. Like, what's what what is it I'm supposed to be seeing here?" And finally, like you start to deconstruct it, and you realize that really you don't see the individual hairs. You they just don't really show up. And so turns out the trick is don't really paint individual hairs. You paint them, you paint hair and fur as though it's mostly a solid flat surface or flat-ish surface. And then towards the end, you just start to give it a little bit of texture. Now, that said, I saw, this is so weird painting on camera. Just, just so you know, like I'm normally I hold it super close. It's so strange to me. That said, if so, she did it like that. I will say about the only thing that I've ever seen that kind of really challenges what she said there was Sergio Calvo put out a video on his Patreon. I'm having to mix up a little more of that. Hopefully, I got pretty close. I think I did. Put out a video on his Patreon where he did the fur on his big cat thing that he did for Crystal Brush that I mean was bananas good, like just straight up crazy good. And he painted every single piece of that fur as an individual brushstroke. Like I couldn't believe it, and it looked amazing. But he's also Sergio Cal, so take that as you will, right? Hey, you finished your first mini. That's fantastic. Thanks, JS Leezy 2000. I'm pretty happy with it so far. So I'm going to come back in. I think that was a little brighter than my other one, but we're going to brighten it up just a little bit more. We gotta go nice and slow here. So all we're trying to do here, remember, we don't really want to cover everything. We're just catching the tops now here. Okay. We got that. Sometimes on this mini, I don't know why on this mini, but I tend to lose track of what I've already painted. It's really weird. Like I'm like, have I done this? I don't remember. So I was saying earlier, if you get some on the skin, it's not a big deal. Like you can touch up the skin. We're gonna be blacklining when we're done. If I feel like the transitions are a bit too stark when I'm done, I might glaze something over it, but I don't know. Hair can take a lot of starker transitions because the lines themselves, the hair lines and stuff like that, tend to hide the transitions pretty well. So you don't always have to get beautiful, perfect blends for it to work well. But if I feel like I need to, then we'll just take some sort of glaze and we'll come back in and make some magic happen. Alrighty, so we've done that. I don't think we've done this. So you can tell, guys, I'm not going like super slow and careful. Like, I'm not a believer that you have to be like the world's tiniest brush and all that kind of stuff. I use the biggest absolute brush I can get away with. I spend the most time on the parts that people are going to pay attention to, which is the face and any kind of outstanding features that they have, some kind of, they've got some sort of special weapon or something. You're still debating on paint. Oh, you got to make decisions, man. I think the one thing that I like to tell people about that is, man, it's just paint. Like, if something screws up, like, just start over. Like, all you gotta do is paint over it. So we're just working through here. Oh, I got a little bit on that. That's not ideal, but that's okay. Okay, we're gonna come back. I think we're gonna end up having to spend the most time on this junk back here. I'm gonna start adding in a little bit of the texture here, not too much. I'm just doing short little strokes here. I think one of the biggest things that when I realized that pro painters did versus what I was doing was their stroke. Like you need surprisingly little pressure, and you really only need to be painting with the very tip of your brush. Yeah, one of the hardest lessons I ever learned in painting is if you mess something up, you can fix it. Yeah, no lie. I gotta tell you, for a while, um, I was always like, I'm gonna strip it. I'm gonna start over and I'm gonna strip it. I can't believe I did this. Like da 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 da. And now it's like, maybe I'll just paint over that. Like, do I really need to strip that? About the only time that I ever strip anything these days, if I've gone too far and I have introduced some sort of texture in a critical area. So I think where that happens most of the times is faces. So what'll happen is so I'll get back to that, but this is where I've got a much brighter color now, and I'm going to start putting in more of a dagger motion um, to start to get some of that hair feeling. So yeah, one of the hardest. Oh yeah, so if I screw up on a face and I go too fast with the layers, what'll happen is you'll start to pull up the previous layer. You'll start to pull up the previous layer. And if you pull up the previous layer, then it starts to leave this weird texture. Now, sometimes you can get away with that. Sometimes, if it's on leather or something like that, that can be a good thing. Like it can look good to have a little bit of can look good to have a little bit of texture. The one place that looks absolutely horrid is on the face. So what we absolutely don't do is leave texture on a face. So you can see here, I'm just making some little dagger motions. I'm just trying to give the illusion that there's some little tiny hairs here. You can see it's nothing drastic. So, um, so yeah, um, if I do screw up on a face, I'll strip it. Because once you screw up on a face, like that's all anybody's gonna see. I once got all the way done with a mini and didn't like an eye or something. So it's like I'm going to redo that eye real quick. Won't take long, no problem. Totally messed up, like hosed up the eye area so bad. It was like something straight out of like the Goonies. It was so bad. And so, what do? I was like, there's no rescuing it. I've introduced texture. I took a Q-tip and some stripper and stripped just the face. And that was a surgical job there. I really didn't want to repaint the rest of that. Probably right. I have normal acrylic. So, yeah, thanks for the Goonies reference. Okay, so you say you have normal acrylic at the house. JL, oh no, who had that? Yeah, JS Sleazy 2000. So I'll say this: if you've got normal acrylic, I'm assuming you mean like non-hobby or non-miniature paint, and it's like craft paint from Walmart. I would highly recommend to get some actual paints. They honestly will make such a difference in your painting. It's just so much easier. Can you use the other ones? Absolutely. You can use them, but it's like trying to it's like crippling you. It's tying one hand behind you. Hey, you guys! There we go. Yeah. Um, Gosh, do you know how long it's been since I've seen that, y'all? Like, that's not even. You guys are gonna distract me, aren't you? Like, I'm gonna be all like talking painting, and then you're gonna be like, "Hey, the Goonies." Although I guess I did bring it up to be fair. All right, so we are not going to do too much more on this fur. With everything else that's going on this miniature, like, there's not going to be a lot of people that really look at the fur. So this is probably going to be my last layer. I might go through and do one more. If I get all done and I'm like, I just don't like the fur, I'll come back and hit another one. But I'm a big fan of spending time where time counts. What he said, you can get some good hobby paints for not much. I've started moving. Golden artist acrylics are good. Yep, they're different. If you can swing it, the Reaper learned. Okay, so Reaper learned the paint kits. So I actually started with a Reaper learn to paint kit, core kit number one, and those are instructions put out by Rhonda Bender, and I think that they are hands down the best way to learn. Like I just cannot imagine why anyone would not want to learn those because it's like a specific set of instructions for the minis that you get, the paints that you need to do that, and then just brushes and minis and everything. People are like, well, you can just go watch YouTube and follow along with them. You know what? If you watch YouTube to learn to paint, there's nothing wrong with that. But then you have to go find the specific mini that they're talking about. You've got to go find the specific paints that they're talking about. You've got to go do everything just exactly like they do, and you've got to hunt it all down. Otherwise, honestly, what they're talking about may not exactly work. cheaper learn to paint kits. They've got everything you need in there, and they're just super fantastic. All right, we're going to call the fur done. Um, we could definitely go up a little more, but I think if we went too bright, it might distract from some of the rest of it. What do we need to do next? Yeah, let's do the non-metallic steel, right? Let's do the chain. So everybody's like, ooh, N&M, we love N&M, right? N&M is something that I still struggle with at times. So if you see me like, I don't know what I'm doing, then we will figure it out together. How about that? All right. So the trick with N&M in general is contrast. You need contrast. You've got to go from very dark to very light. The colors are not as important to sell the metallic effect as the contrast is itself. Sometimes these things get clogged. I haven't figured out exactly why yet. Sometimes they do. They're kind of a pain to unclog, but I figured out if you open them up and take a spare airbrush needle and poke it down in these little holes, then it tends to unclog real easy. Of course, it would help if I found that. Hey, Mr. Bug, you're going away. I don't know if Open Acrylics line is still going. Liquid-Tech makes it. They have a what's the word? They made a new one. It's a liquid gouache. It's a new gouache. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. That was not shaken well enough, was it? Um, so, well, I guess maybe it was. They have a new line called, I do not remember now. It's some sort of gouache. Anyways, they basically look like mini paints, y'all. Like, I'm almost certain they are. All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start working on this chain here. Okay, so chain is gonna be steel colored, kind of a blue steel. Okay, both here and here. And what we've got to do is we've got to leave very dark black, and we've got to work up to pretty much white. So we've got just a real dark blue that we made here, and we're just going to slowly work up, and we're just going to make sure that we get our highlights kind of where we think we want them. And yeah, the important part here is that we don't cover all the black. We need some really dark parts to sell this, because what sells N&M is the contrast. Okay. So I don't know how much you can see just due to the dynamic range of the camera. Right now, what I'm putting down is a very dark blue. And all I'm doing is covering most of the chain, but leaving the kind of outline and edges of it black. And that's what we need to do. When you do N&M, like I said, again, this is not something that I would say is something I'm a pro at in N&M. So if anybody is like, that's not right with anything I'm about to say, yeah, you're probably right. It's probably not. Did I airbrush the skin tones? Yes and no. I hadn't mentioned that, so you didn't miss that. I have not. This is the first time I painted this on camera, and I did not start this on camera. The skin tones were partially airbrushed. They were brushed, and then they were kind of smoothed out with the airbrush. Okay, so back to N and N M. So the other important thing is to visualize highlights, right? So we got to figure out where. So if the light is coming down, we're going to have the light kind of coming down, not quite top down, but more like a 45 here. Because if it was top down, almost all that chain, because see how he's at a tilt. If it was totally top down, that chain would just be dark, and there would be almost nothing, and that would be super boring, right? So what we want to do is pretend that this is more like a 45, so it's coming in more like this. Yeah, so something like this. So that way it's going to catch it. So since this chain is pretty much entirely curved, then really it's going to catch it in a pretty traditional way, in that it's going to be mostly um, along the edges and stuff. When you have more complex patterns, especially flat panels and stuff with M&M, you really have to think more about where the light is coming from. Alrighty. We've just stepped up the blue a little bit, and we're just trying to cover just a little bit less here. This is probably going to be one of the slower parts of all this, is the M&M, just because if I screw up, it will probably be in going too fast. You can see once I put some paint down, I am not really messing with it again. That's kind of important, and I think that's where some people tend to overcomplicate this, is that they, oh no, I didn't get it exactly right. Oh no, I didn't do it, and they start to play with the paint. When you do that, it introduces texture. When you get texture on your paint, then life gets a lot more complicated. So even if you screwed it up, let it go. Thanks, I like the hue too. I'm liking the skin tones. You know, I don't always like my skin tones, but I was pretty happy with these. I think Reaper makes some of the best skin tones. I pointed out earlier, this is based off of the bronze skin highlight, but with some added ivory in the highlights and some added purple in the shadows. All right, so we're just gonna keep working up. All we're gonna do is we're gonna take some of this light warm gray that we used earlier, and we're gonna start adding this in nice and slowly into our purple, or into our blue. We got to make sure that we do not go too fast on this. That's about the worst thing you can do here, is go too fast. If we do, we can always glaze and tone it back down. This is probably a little too bright, but we're gonna try it here. It might work. We'll see. Probably works better on camera. So dynamic range is the light and dark values of something. So cameras have less dynamic range than the human eye. Human eye, if I remember right, can see 20 something what's called stops of dynamic range, which means we can differentiate the dark and light values of something quite a bit. A really nice camera, you know, maybe 15, 16, maybe up to 18. What purple did you use for the shadow? I've been using dioxide purple. Yeah. So I don't know if you can, let's see how much you can see. So you can see we're starting to work up the blue. So the human eye can see way more than a camera. So what does that mean? What that means is that the vast majority of the time, these paint jobs that are on minis and stuff like that look way better in person than they do on camera. Because the camera just does not capture it. I never kind of really believed that until I went to a show, the Atlanta Figure Show, and I saw some work from some absolutely amazing mini artists, like Elizabeth Beckley Bradford, Rhonda Bender, thanks Balmordian, Rhonda Bender, uh, Aaron Lovejoy, all sorts of just FER, Fernando Ruiz, all these just ridiculously amazing people. And it was like, holy cow, like I should not even be painting in the same room as these people. Like they were legitimately that much better. Okay, I went up a little too bright, but I'm doing this area with it because it's such a small area. If I tried to do the chain with this, I went up a little too bright. It probably wouldn't be appropriate. So I'm going to pull a little bit more blue into this. So only takes a very little bit of light here. all we're doing is just catching the little bits on this chain here. All right, you can start to see how we're uh, you can start to see how we're defining the chain, right? So we're going to do one more here, and go here and here and here. And we're just going to start to catch. So notice we're only catching this top edge here. We're not doing everything here. We're trying to visualize really on this curved surface. You know, if you need to, go look up a chain. You know, see how it reflects light, and try to get a good idea of where that needs to do. We're just trying to make sure that we give it some good contrast here. I might have gone a little too fast, but on this, partially I don't want to be doing just a chain all day. Oh, hey, Sean. Alrighty. Really, this should go faster and faster because we cover a smaller point every time. This is maybe a little more blue than I'd like. I'm trying a new recipe. Normally I tend more towards grays and then I'll just blaze a little blue. I wanted to try just starting from blue. So probably a little more blue than I'd like. I may lighten it up a bunch and then blaze in some gray when we're done to kind of tone it down on the blue. I don't know. We'll see. All right, so right now all we're kind of doing is just touching these. We want to highlight this top edge here. Okay, and then we're just really focusing on small areas now for contrast, right? We don't want to cover all the previous work. So you can see here how we're starting to build up that contrast. Okay, but we still got a ways to go here. Sometimes these programs are so opaque, they cover too well. It's like I wish they would be a little more transparent, but they're actually uh, coming out with a line of transparency, which is super nice. So I could always blaze them down thinner if I wanted. But part of it is I'm trying to paint so that you guys can actually see what's going on. Alrighty, so we've done that. I wish you'd take, I know, right? Like, where are the paints? Like, I need the paints. What's sad is because of that, I swear I've already ordered like 2 or 3 other paint brands that I wouldn't have ordered if he would just freaking take my money. All right. So this probably hasn't looked metallic yet because we're not bright enough. It's one of those things, non-metallic goes from like, what is that to, oh, it's metal in a pretty short amount of time because it really has to have the highlights. So you can see we're starting to get that pop. Then I think what I'm going to do here in a moment is glaze a little bit because some of these have turned a little stark on me. I might also take out the airbrush. We'll have to see. That's not looking too bad. Any questions, comments? Somebody's like, I don't know what he's talking about. What is he going on about? I didn't used to like the look of non-metallic metal. Sometimes I still don't. Sometimes I like the look of true metal better. but I don't know. It just kind of grew on me. So we're just brightening all this, and you can see now these layers are going really fast because we're just adding little tiny dots. What's the next lottery numbers? I thought you knew. You don't know? I was counting on you. Man, I feel disappointed now. All right, so at this point, I'm going to move because we're doing such tiny areas now. I'm going to move straight to our warm gray, which is a pretty bright gray here. Now, if we put it next to white, let's actually put some white down. We'll see it doesn't look that bright next to white, but it's fairly bright. Um, so there's white. You can see like bam. So we are going to add a little bit of white in there, but not quite yet. So I've thinned out this gray quite a bit. And if I didn't, it would just go down super, super bad. So all we're doing is just catching the very tips here. We really need to brighten these spots up. And then after we do this gray, we will do one thing of white. And then we'll see if we want to call it done or if we want to laze it down and re-up a little bit. It's kind of dark in some places, but I don't know. He's an ogre. Like, it should be dark, right? Like, he shouldn't have like this perfect chain, right? I don't love some of the transitions though. My brain is telling me you should blaze this down to smooth everything out. How long have I been painting? Let's take a guess. Unless you know, like some people know, take a guess. Like, if you know, no cheating though. Somebody take a guess. Alrighty. Anybody else? We got one guess. All right, Loim is the only one guessing. Alrighty, Loim, you are correct. I've been painting not quite 2 years. I've been painting, what would this be, maybe 20 months, 21 months, something like that. I paint, I don't know, almost every day, probably. I I would say the vast majority of mini painters that paint for studios and such have been painting much longer than me. So I don't know. I fight a little bit of imposter syndrome sometimes, but I don't know. It's fun. I enjoy it. I've been in some form of art my whole life. I used to be a professional photographer, stuff like that. Okay, so you can see. Um, so that's where we're at with the chain. I might come back to it. We'll see. I'm gonna fix. There's just one link right there that's just bugging the tar out of me. So I'll probably go back and fix a few of these. I don't love some of these. This one's bugging me too. Uh, but I think we're gonna move on. And if I feel like it's worth coming back to, then I'll glaze it and re-highlight it. Thank you. I mean, I took a lot of art as a kid. I've always been involved in some kind of art. I was a professional photographer. I was a professional videographer. I used to do like basically run concerts and stuff like that. So that was kind of fun. Okay, so we're gonna call the N and M done. We need to do the black on his belt. It is really just black now, and we need some additional fun colors there. The what I really like for highlighting black, which I think is the hardest color to work around, is the Dark Elf Triad from Reaper. It just it's kind of a purpley black, and I think it does really well. You can see my high tech unclogger right here. It's a T-pen with a piece of milliput on it. Good night, Loim. Thank you regarding my eye for color and shade. Oh, that came out super fast. Alrighty. So we're just going to lay out all these. It's the Dark Elf Triad. It's highlight, shade, and normal skin. And then we're just going to use these to highlight black. The trick with black, with most colors, but especially black, it will look gray super fast on you if you kind of treat it normal. What you really want to do is leave at least like 50% of the area black. So we're just going to start off. You guys can tell I really don't thin my paint a whole lot. I'm just dipping my brush in a little bit of water. It's not even like a full brush load of water. It's really just enough to get the paint just a little more flowy. But I don't like to put down 27,000 layers, so I don't. So all I'm doing right now is I've got the Dark Elf, the shadow, and I'm just kind of picking out some details in here, but I need to leave the majority of this pretty much black. And what this is going to do is add a little bit of visual interest to the belt. And it's also going to make the black look more black in some ways. Then what we'll do after this is we'll take a little bit of, move my palette where you guys can see it for that. We're going to take a little bit of black ink, because black ink is like black on steroids sometimes. And we're just going to reinforce the middle of the belt where probably the blackest. All right, so we've kind of run an edge along that. You probably can't tell too much different other than it probably looks a little bit more cleaned up in some areas. Okay. Then we're going to take our Dark Elf skin. We're going to thin this down a little bit more than normal. We have 12 viewers, guys. I was hoping for one to win in my book. All right, so we're doing this, doing this. For anybody who's just started watching, we're finishing out some details on this. We've done the fur, we've done a little bit of N and M on the chain. You can see the chain there. We're working on the belt. The belt's probably going to take about another 2 or 3 minutes. This is not an item that we need to be spending a lot of time on. Nobody is ever going to look at this belt and go, man, I can't believe that belt. Okay, so all we want to do is make sure it's not like plain Jane. Okay, so we're just going around and we're hitting the edges. Okay, especially after we add the OSL on there, nobody's going to be looking at the belt. Like, that's the kind of the thing to remember, is that once we put this OSL on here, like, the viewer's eye is immediately going to be drawn to that. All right, so all I'm doing is kind of adding this Dark Elf skin highlight around the edge of the belt. It'll just help define the edge of the belt. Okay. I'm going to mix a little bit of our gray in here. I want to go a little bit brighter. And then what we don't want to do is leave all these kind of lines. So all I'm going to do is I just took a little bit of them, and we're just going to stipple it just a little bit. We're just going to leave just a little bit of texture on this edge. We don't want it to be a solid. So if you can see we just added a little bit in there, and all we're doing is we're just you don't know stippling, it just means dots. Stippling is one of those techniques that I don't know why people don't really talk about that much, but it's kind of the way that you make things more visually interesting. More dots. Now, if if Sergio ever watches my stream, when you make dots, you're supposed to go dot 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 dot, and he claims that you know you make better dots when you make sounds. So he's a funny guy. If you ever get a chance to take a class from Sergio, you should definitely take a class from Sergio. The logic checks out. I think so too. I mean, I don't know about you, but you know. Okay, so honestly, we're not going to do a whole lot more on the belt here. I'm about to take some black ink, but really, like I said, nobody's going to be looking at this belt. Black ink is like super black, so this is a little scale color ink tense. The black ink is actually also not going to be super flat, which, believe it or not, um, actually works in our favor for this. For whatever reason, um, it being slightly satin actually makes it look deeper, I guess is the right word. All we're doing is we're just going along the middle of the belt here. You can see that Bat makes the best pictures, I know, right? We're just reinforcing the blackness of this belt because, once you go black, right? This is the same, ink that we'll use later on when we want to pen line, when we want to line something. So just to give you a little taste, I'm going to thin out a little bit of this ink. Do that. Get it real nice and thin. And then see this area right between the belt and the fur? It doesn't really look very defined. All we're going to do is we're just going to take that and we're just going to run that like that. That's it. And that's how we line. There's no secret to lining. See, we just take and we're just going to run that right along there. You just got to have a good sharp brush to do that with. Otherwise, you're going to make a big, gigantic nightmare of things. You don't always use black. I use black if something is really dark near it. If we're when we go to line this area right here, probably not going to use black. It'll probably be more like a darker brown or something. All right, guys. We've done the fur, we've done the belt, we did the steel chain, which I'm not totally in love with, but we're gonna move on. We've got the skin, we've got all this. I think the next thing, we got to do toenails too. All right, let's do toenails super quick. Where are we going? We're gonna do little stained ivory. These are this is Reaper stained ivory. This is gonna be fairly close to a skin texture. I don't really want them to pop out at me. No, again, nobody's gonna be looking at his skin texture. We're gonna mix a little bit of this purple in. We want to darken it up a little bit to start off with. The more often you guys can use the same kind of colors that are already on your palette, the better. Like, restricting your palette is a good thing. You should not try to use 5,000 different colors. What's interesting is whenever I paint my bases, so all these rocks and trees and anything like this, I have kind of a strict rule that the only colors on my ground come from the existing colors in my palette. So like the browns and the grays and everything for all this are going to be made from his skin tones, his other tones, all that, because I want him to exist in the environment. I don't want the environment to be like, funky shades of other colors that don't make sense. So by making the browns and grays and stuff out of his texture, he kind of looks like he fits better in the environment. What were toenails? That's right. So we took that. We're just gonna thin this out a little bit. Lordy, I still got 12 people watching me. Don't you guys know that I don't know what I'm doing? All we're doing is we're just making little hash marks here because we want his feet to have a little bit of his toenails to have a little bit of texture, right? Like visually, they're going to be way more interesting with some texture. You do not have to do too many layers here. If you do a bunch of layers, you are wasting your time because nobody's looking at your feet. All right, so now all we're going to do is we're going to take this brightest color, we're going to thin it down, and we're just going to try to catch the very edge of this. Again, I am still all doing this with just a size 1 Raphael 8404 because big brushes make it go by faster. You probably can't see what I'm doing, but he's got a foot back in there. Alrighty, so toenails are done. He's got some funky looking toenails there. We need to do these doodads up here. We need to do his scars and stuff like that. And then I think it's time for the OSL. How long have I been streaming now? Where's my timer? 1 hour. Holy crap, y'all. Like, I've been streaming an hour. Like, how did I fool you guys into watching me for an hour? Like, is somebody paying you guys? What's going on? Are you guys finding this helpful? Like, is this good? Are you like, I wish he would do more of something, less or something? Let me know. Jokes on you, free paint lessons. Haha. Wait a minute. Free? You guys are like the check's in the mail, right? Like, are you guys not paying me? Okay, so we got to do the doodads, the dicky hoos up here, the scars, and then the OSL. So none of those are going to take too long. Let's go ahead and just knock these scars out super fast. Or not the scars, the doodads. We're going to use some of the Pro Curl Reds to do this. We're just going to drop some red right there. I'm going to drop. How often do I plan on streaming? I have no earthly idea, y'all. Like, the only reason that I'm streaming at all is because silly me promised to paint that beholder on camera on my giveaway, and I thought, you know what? I probably ought to have some vague notion of how to stream. Yeah, that's about right. I lost a bet. I'd have some vague notion of how to stream before I'm like, I'm painting this beholder, and like 2,000 people decide to watch it. I don't think that's going to happen, but you never know. That's the thing with those giveaways, guys. Like, I never know how they're going to do. Like, I've done giveaways and had like 40 people sign up. I've done giveaways and had like apparently like 3,000 people sign up, you know? You just never know. I got red paint all over my hand. Yay for me. The giveaway was good though. I like doing giveaways. I like giving back to the community. It's fun. People, it always blows my mind how crazy people go over for like a $5 mini. Like, I remember I gave away beholder once, and like, 2,000 people, tried to win this beholder, and it's like a $5 mini. Actually, it's $4.30 for me. But I do also know that they are apparently rather hard to get a hold of for some people. So we're just going to paint all these doodads and thingamajigs red. I don't know really what they're supposed to be, but they're all going to be red. The hard part about this right now is that I really, 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 really don't want to hit the skin, because I really don't want, because this is like right in the middle of his chest. So if like my hand bumps and I hit the skin, I'm gonna cry, y'all. I boo-booed when I was doing his little thing there. This part right there should have been that cream kind of color that I already did on the rest of sometimes it's hard to see. Do you guys ever have where you're like, I don't know what this is on a mini, like painting something, you're like, I have no idea what it is that I'm painting, or like where it stops and something else starts? Yeah, I always hate that. I'm not a fan either of what I call like detail diorama. Like, it's okay not to you use jeweler's glasses. It's okay not to put 6,000 different buckles and stuff on your mini. Like, it's okay. I feel like some companies do that better than others. Um, Personally, I think Reaper does a really good job with that. They kind of rein in their sculptors, I feel like. And they're like, don't give him 17 pairs of pants to wear, please. And I like that. I literally counted 4 different belts one time on a miniature from another company, and I was like, I don't like. How does this guy get dressed in the morning? What's going on? The herbalist in her eyes. Yeah, I mean, I think the herbalist in her eyes are fine. Like, I wasn't sure. I asked about that yesterday if that's what you were referring to. I wasn't sure what they were. I think they're. I like the fact that she squints. What I needed though was I had to have um, a mini that had good eyes on it because I'm trying to find the correct mini to do the class that for ReaperCon. So I was trying to find one with a good face. All right, well, we're going to use a slightly different technique here. This is a pretty small area here, so I don't want to put down, a ton of layers here. So we're not going to have super smooth transitions here. What we're going to do is we're going to step them up relatively quick, and then we're going to glaze over them at the end. And let that kind of be that. We might touch them up afterwards, but we'll see. Red is a pretty transparent pigment. By that I mean it does not cover well. That can be a good thing or a bad thing. It is a bad thing when you need to cover well. It is a good thing when you are trying to, uh, blend in layers and stuff like that. So in this case, it's a good thing because we really don't want to put down a bunch. And we might get away with doing super few. Alrighty, so we've got this. I'm going to add a little yellow or a little orange in. I like highlighting red with orange. It totally does depend on what kind of red you're going for, though. But generally speaking, I like the kind that highlights better with that. Red is, some people consider red one of the more difficult colors to highlight. I've never had a super hard time highlighting it, but I don't know, some people do. I don't know, guys. We might not even need the blaze at the end. This is going pretty good. So I'm just mixing a little more orange into my mix, and then we're not going to take this up too much further. Because this is another one of these things where nobody's really going to be looking at this by the time we're done. Yeah, sure. We'll call that done. Unfortunately, we have to fix this part right here. Because I was thinking that this was part of these other red bits, but this is actually part of the chain. So I have to try to remember what in the world I did there. I know I started with, what color do I find the hardest to highlight? I know I started with this golden brown. I'm going to do that, and then I think if I just bring it up with some ivories, it should be close enough that I don't care. Definitely black. I mean, black is the hardest color in general for me to paint and like have it look interesting and still like black. We did it earlier. I think it looks okay. There are some companies out there that make, very good black progressions, not triads, but I think Vallejo has Vallejo or Scale 75. One of them has a really good like black highlighting kit, if you want to call it that. And so that yeah, we're just gonna take some of this and some of this and kind of touch that up and then call it good. Black is one, white is the other. Both of those though, the trick is basically that you need to, yeah, we're gonna call this good probably. It's good enough for what we're doing right now. The trick is that you need to leave a large portion of the surface um, with whatever the main color is. So when you're highlighting, well, I'm sorry, that's wrong for white. Um, when you're doing white, the trick is you don't start white. You start much lower than white, and then your final highlights should be white. With I decided I wanted these a little more orange right here. The trick with black is that you start black and you have to leave a large portion of it to be black. I'm gonna blend this round ball a little bit with a little bit there. All I did was take some thinned out and kind of hit the edges of it to kind of blend those edges. All right, guys, so we've done that. We did the chain. We did that. What do we have left? Do we have any? Is it OSL time? Is that what time we are? We haven't done the base, but we don't need to for this. We went black line, but I usually black line last, and I don't really want to. Oh, nope, we got to do scars. You guys almost had me. Nobody was going to speak up. Nobody was going to be like, no, no, no. You said to do that. Maybe I just need to stop before we get to the OSL. All right, so we're going to do the scars real quick. They won't take long. All we're going to do is brighten up the edges of the scars a little bit. I'm just taking my my, where was it? The bronze highlight. Bam. And we're just going to thin that out pretty thin. And we're going to mix just the tiniest bit of red in there. We just want them to look a little aggravated. We might do a little bit more of that. And then we're just going to hit just the edges of all these scars. We just want to kind of make them stand out a little bit. We're going to be real careful. We do not want to touch the rest of the paint job because the skin right now I'm super happy with. I really, really don't want to mess it up. Let me rephrase that. I really, really don't want to. If that happens, it's not the end of the world, but it's pretty close. I will blame you guys. Did you say that was a 3D print? Yes. This is a 3D print. All right, we're gonna have to go a little darker for these scars back here because they're mostly in shadow. I'm gonna touch this one. Do this one, and then the ones in the back we will hit. Yeah, I'm okay with this. That's probably a little too stark right there. I might do that. This is a 3D print. What do you think you have? All right. I'll start with, did you say this 3D print? Yes, this is a 3D print. This is a resin 3D print for an upcoming Kickstarter called, oh, I don't know what it's called actually. It's by a company 3D printed tabletop. They do fantastic stuff. Love them. They too red. There we go. All we're doing, guys, is we're just gonna come in and highlight this one. This is a resin print, not an FDM print. You know the difference. Um, all that means basically is that it's much higher quality. You gotta realize most of these big guys. Now I'm gonna tone this one down a little bit. Most of this one too. Most of the big manufacturers now, at some point, are printing their masters in 3D prints. So the next 3D printed tabletop guild. Yep. Um, they I can't tell you what it's about. I really want to. I've got to talk to Danny and find out if I'm allowed to tell you. If I am, I will. It was like hush hush for a while, but I'm super excited about their next one. Their next one's just going to be sweet. Like it's 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 cool. So all right, I'm just touching this one a little more, a little more. That one's fine. Come back. We're gonna do these just a little more, a little brighter. We just want them to make a kind of draw attention to these. Sometimes, guys, you don't always have to do what's super realistic. You need to do what draws attention to things you want to draw attention to. So, on his skin, if we draw attention to the scars, it will it will draw attention away from any places that I might have screwed up the paint job, which, is good for me. So what we're going to do next is we're going to fill in the scarred areas with a little bit of red. We're going to make them look a little angry. But what we don't want to do is be like red, 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 and it looked like he's like freshly cut. That would be bad. So we're going to take some of his bronze skin shadow, which is the darkest of his bronze, of his skin. And we're just taking a teeny, sorry, hiccuping, guys. We're just going to take a teeny bit of that, and we're going to mix in some red into that. The red will probably overpower this, yeah, pretty strongly. So yeah, that redded it up pretty good. There we go. And then we're going to thin this down pretty strong. We want this to, so my water that I've just got a cup of water over here. It's off camera. It's like right there. Um, the water is just water, but it also has a little bit of flow aid in the water. And all we're going to do here is just, that might have been a little too red still. We're going to see how it dries. Yeah, I think that was too red. So I don't like that. So before it dries, I'm just going to take some water and kind of wipe that away. That was too red. I didn't like that. So what we're going to do is, what should we do? Let's take a little more of the skin tone here. My water, I can't remember if I said it, also has a little bit of, there we go, that's flow aid in it. I like to keep just a little bit of flow aid in there. All right, so here we go, guys. All we're doing is we're just making these just a little red. We're just going on the inside of these. If you doubt your brush control, you should do this first. Like you should do it and then highlight the edges. But I don't know. I just like to highlight them first. So you can see all we're doing is just adding just a little bit. Just a little bit of visual interest. We've got a few on the back here, right? So we're just coming in here. I'm trying to stay on camera, guys. On the back here, we can probably bump up the red a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll just take some of that red, just make a real dirty wash with it, and just slide that down in there, especially on this big one. All right, we went really red here. And we're just going to drop that right down in the red. All right, so at this point, we're done with the scars, guys. All right, don't lie to me. Is there anything else we need to do before the OSL? I'm counting on you guys. All right, so somebody said, who has hosted the class I've learned the most from? Thank you for streaming and explaining what you're doing and why it's really helpful to nobody like me. You're most welcome. Stop back by. I'm thinking maybe Tuesday nights is what I might do. We'll see. Who has hosted the class? Probably Aaron Lovejoy. I'm gonna sit. I'm gonna rest back for a moment, guys, before we start the OSL. Just half a moment. Um, probably, yeah, probably Aaron Lovejoy. He did a weekend workshop with Elizabeth Beckley Bradford, and his particular style, I think, was really good. He uses a lot of different techniques. He uses a lot of brush and airbrush like me, and I just really felt that his particular style meshed well with my own. I was happy with that. So, alrighty, I can't. No rest for the weary. Let's go ahead and tackle, and we'll do the OSL now. So the first thing we got to do, first thing, is this needs to be white. This needs to be like white, white. So we're just taking some pure white, and we got to make sure that this is white. So the trick with good OSL, the OSL effect has to be the brightest thing on your piece. If it is not the brightest thing on your piece, it will not look like a light source. So you're trying to fool the audience into thinking that you have something on your thing that is emitting light. If something else is brighter on your mini, then it will not look like that is looking like light. Okay? All right, let's talk about the other things. If this is emitting light, we need to decide where it's going to roughly end. I don't think this is going to be super bright, like the sun bright by the time we're done. So I've decided it's going to end somewhere along his shoulder. It might get a little over onto his face, but I don't want that to really be the focus. I want it to mostly stick in this area. Okay? So because of that, I have over highlighted this section right here. This is brighter than this side by a considerable amount. We could even take a little brighter. We've got some of our let's make sure that's the right one. Where is it? Our not bronze skin highlight. Let's put some bronze skin highlight down, and we're just going to go real thin with it. And we're going to make sure that we get that area nice and bright compared to the rest of the skin. We're going to mix a little bit of white with it, and this should really brighten things up. Okay, and we're just going to lay the glaze over here. I'm not going to worry too much about the back right now. I want the back to look darker overall than the front, like, because of how, oh, that's okay. That got a little bit of that in there. That's okay. So I want the back to look darker than the front because we are viewing our light source coming in from that angle, right, guys? So remember I said we're not going straight top down. I'm just blending that in a little bit. Okay. I said, so we're not going straight top down. We're coming in more like this. Oh, I have a huge drop of water there. So we're coming in more like this. Okay, now this light source is coming in over here. So what that means is that the brightest point should be right here. Not back here, not up here, right there. And that's what we've done. Okay. Is this dry yet? Yep, that's dry. All right. So now what we've got to do is we're going to be playing around a little bit, trying to get, I'm going to wipe some of these colors off my palette here, actually. Sometimes I'll do this just to make some room. Keep it mostly in the area that, okay. Yep. We're going to be playing around a little bit, getting the transitions that we want. So this is the fluorescent paint. Fluorescent paints are super ideal for light sources for OSL. Why? Because they're super, super bright and they keep it looking like a light source. Okay, the other trick with light sources is it's got to go very bright. It also has to have some darker, cooled off places. It's got to have places that go darker. So we're going to put down some of this too. We've already got some dark, kind of more neutral darks on the palette, so we're going to use those. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be leaving the middle of this mostly white, and then we're going to be making these outside edges a lot darker. But we're going to start with this, right? And we're going to mostly cover this with this, and then we'll come back in and reinforce the white in the middle a little bit. Okay. So wow, that is so bright you can't even hardly tell it on camera. Let me see if I can turn that brightness down for you guys. Creatix is my favorite. Yeah, um, it's one of my favorites. Um, Sorry guys, I've got to figure out how to turn this brightness down real quick. I thought I had left that particular thing up, but I guess I did not. Okay, cancel. Back to here. Okay, let me see if no, that's not. Where's exposure? That's what I want to do. All right, so I'm gonna drag that way down so that you guys can see better. Createx is one of my favorites for sure. Um, Partially they airbrush so well, and a good chunk of this will need to be airbrushed by the end. Like, well, not a good chunk of it, but you'll see how the process works. Can you do this without an airbrush? Absolutely. An airbrush just makes it so much easier. All right. So you can see on camera that still looks largely white, right? Does it? Can't tell. That's because it's so dang bright. In real life, this is actually like almost solid green. Let me see if I can drag it down a little more. That just really wants to be bright. But that's a good thing. You want it to be bright. Let me see if there's any contrast. Nope. Boy, that jacked it up. How do we get that back? There we go. Okay. All right. So we're waiting for this to dry. Okay. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to slowly start adding in some of this darker color into our green, and we're just going to make these transitions here. The green is very transparent. This turquoise here is not. Like, it will cover much, much stronger. So we're just mostly focusing on the outside. We want to leave that inside to be really bright. We want to make it look like it has some sort of internal glow to it, right? That's what we're trying to do, is make it look glowy. So you can see how we're going to kind of get that effect here. We will probably need to work out with the green and then kind of come back in, add a little bit of white. It almost never ends up being like a nail it on the first try thing, like for me at least. So all I'm trying to do here is just slowly work this darker and darker. And what you don't want to do is only stick with a green. Like if you just stick with like a straight like forest green or something like that, it's not going to go well, because light sources tend to change colors as they cool. Now, what color magical green fire changes, that's kind of up to you. But having some sort of change will make it easier. So what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and take some of that color and just put it right on the edge there, because I know that I'm going to want that. And then we'll work to blend that down into that. but it's going to help give me a sense of where I need to end up. So you can see here the direction we're going here. Now what we've got to do, we're going to take some of this black here. We're going to darken that up. That might have been a little too much there. The brush control went a little crazy because of the camera. So you can see here, we're really darkening that up. We probably went too fast here, so what we're going to do is we're going to start adding some of these intermediate colors back in. Okay. Then we're going to take some of our white. I'm going to add that over here. Come back in, do a little wet and wet there, not a lot. Do a little bit of white there. We're just kind of looking for something here that blends, going from this extreme darker outside to the whiter. It's going to be a little bit of playing around on this till we kind of get like what we want. The actual OSL effect is pretty dang easy after we get the light source kind of like we want it. All right, I'm wiping a little bit off because it's not dry, but that's actually working to my benefit here. All right, so the main thing, so we can see how that's kind of, got a little glow to it. All right, at this point I gotta let it dry, or I'm just fighting wet paint. I have been abusing this brush, so I'm gonna take a moment to clean it. I like to take good care of my brushes. While that dries, we're just taking, that's a wet sponge. That's a little bit of Gymnastics Drunken Brush Scoop. Just putting that on there. And then we're just going to do this. Whilst we wait for that to dry, it won't take long. Any questions, comments? You're wondering what the heck we're doing. Why am I here? Who are you? What's going on? Why are you painting minis? Like when I tell friends and family that I paint minis. Oh, I don't tell friends and family I paint minis. No, I'm kidding. No, when I tell friends and family that I paint minis, most of the time they're like, why do you do that? Like, why? What's going on? Why would you paint minis? Like, well, it's fun and relaxing. And they're like, isn't it really tiny? Well, yeah, but that's okay. All right, that part right there is driving me nuts. That's where my brush kind of bumped wrong. So we're gonna have to fix that, or yeah. Okay, so all we gotta do here, start blending these down. Off to bed. I'll have to finish watching tomorrow. Hey, thanks, Ultimate Daddy. What got me into painting minis? Playing D&D. I haven't been playing D&D that long, and my friends have, like the group that I play with, and they had these just ridiculous stacks of unpainted minis, and I was like, are those supposed to be painted? And they're like, well, yeah, I mean, that would be nice. Like, Why doesn't someone just paint them? It's like, yeah, good luck with that, you know. And so yeah, so I started painting. Best answer. All right. Why is that? Why is that the right answer? Is there a wrong answer? If I had said painting minis for money, would I be evil? All right, so you can see how this is really starting to come together now. We're getting these little smoother transitions. We've got the nice dark edges. The inside of it's starting to look like light. My big boo-boo there is starting to get covered up a little. See, we all make mistakes. D&D is always the right answer. What are you playing D&D? What's your character? All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some real dark color here. Something, there we go. I like that color. And we're just going to hit just the tips. The goal is to hit just the tips. We'll see. Because what sells OSL really is the contrast, um, much like NNM. These don't have to be perfectly blended. It's okay. It just needs to. I have a Druid Elf, of course, a Dwarf War Cleric, and an IDM. Oh, that's nice. All right, guys. So for the moment, we're going to call that spear glowy enough. So now, the moment of truth where we add the OSL. All right. So we got to have our handy dandy airbrush here. So this is so let me turn this contrast back up. This is killing me here. Okay. So you can see now that that really looks pretty glowy. But the effect isn't really sold until we add some sort of cast off, right? So the big advantage, so let's put it this way, light, when it emits from a source, falls off rather quickly. It is super bright at the source and then falls off for every 1 unit of distance, I believe 4 times. Let me think about the math real quick. Yes, 4 times. So what that means is that something that is bright close by should be the other side of it should be very not bright. Um, so what I'm trying to say is if this is really bright, okay, we can't have like super bright OSL over here or even over here. What we need is it to be brighter the closer it is, and then get more subtle and more subtle and more subtle. Okay. So the advantage is the airbrush kind of does that naturally. If I have the airbrush and I take its tip and I point right here and I airbrush only from the direction of this light right here and keep this tip really close to it, then what's going to happen is very naturally the things that are closer here are going to get more of the effect, and the things that are farther away are going to get less of it. And that happens very naturally because of the spray pattern of the airbrush. Now, the advantage, the huge advantage right now of using these transparent paints that are fluorescents are transparent, is that they don't cover well. They allow some of what's under to show through. If I took, let's see, like oh, sorry, I'm trying to find the paint that I want to use as an example here. If I took, here we go. Oh, I'm just dropping stuff left and right, guys. All right, if I took, oh my goodness, I got like, okay, if I took this green, which is a super bright neon green, and tried this same technique with it, it would not work as well because it's an opaque paint. What happens is instead of tinting the skin that particular color, it's going to cover it in that color. Okay? Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. Sometimes you need to add a little bit of opaqueness in this. If you're painting green and we're covering another color like yellow, not yellow, blue maybe. Yeah, if we're doing something like that, we might need it to be a little more opaque. But since we're doing a really light color, since we have this almost white here already, it's going to tint it naturally while leaving some of these shadows more of their original color. So what's going to happen is we're going to end up with a real subtle fade of green instead of like me spraying and this whole side of him suddenly going Hulk. And that's not what we want. We do not want him to go Hulk. We just want it to look like there's a little bit of light cast off this thing. So we're going to thin this way down. We're going to thin this guy way down, not this guy. We're going to thin this guy way down, stick him in a brush, make sure that we have just really good control. I gave this brush a really good cleaning. I tested it out beforehand. I'm confident that this brush is going to spray like I expect it to spray. If you are not confident with an airbrush, then you just need to practice. I mean, that's the reality of it. Airbrushing is not hard, it just takes practice. Okay. Um, if you need some assistance on which airbrush to get, if you need something like that, give me a shout. I'm more than happy to help. I use Badger airbrushes. This is a Sotar Slim. I like it for the most part. I had a normal Sotar and I changed it for the Sotar Slim, and I kind of might have think that I like the normal Sotar better. I don't know. The big difference is this has no cup, so I can look straight down it and I can see exactly where I'm going. The bad news is this has no cup, so it's kind of a pain in the butt to clean sometimes. So both ways. Yeah. So let's go ahead and we're gonna get it. For this, I'm going so thin on the paint that I'm going to use a little mixing cup for it. Okay. All right. So we're just gonna put in 2 or 3 drops. Createx paint does their best in my research, does their best with their own thinner. Like, it is worth it. And we're just going to put a crap load in here. That is not a measurement of any nature. We're also going to put some of this in there. That makes it stick better to plastic. We're just going to put like 1 drop of that. It does not need much. We're going to take a beat up brush, just this guy, and we're just going to mix this up. Now we got to make sure that this mix is good. If this looks at all like this is looking grainy, and I'm not sure why. It's so frustrating. It wasn't doing that, guys, and then recently this started going grainy on me, and I've got to figure out why. So we're going to dump this out. If you can see it, see, we don't want to risk spraying that. All right, so we're going to dump that out, get that good and cleaned out. Okay. So what we're going to see is I think it might be that balancing clear that I added last. Like, I just started adding that recently, and I wasn't having problems, and I am, but I didn't have problems sometimes with it. I don't know. Let's find out. A little bit of experimenting together, huh? Let me get this good and shaken. All right, you might hear a loud noise for a second. I'm going to stick this in my vortex spinner. You might want to. I don't know how to mute my audio. Well, let me do this here. I can mute it here. 1 second here. Alrighty, I am back, guys. Sorry. Crap load is definitely more than a smidgen. It is considerably more than a smidgen. All right, I think I'm about at the same audio I was. Sup Atomic Pants 007. So does that mean your pants are on fire? Or like they've gone nuclear? Or, I gotta say, that's kind of scary. Alrighty, we're gonna try this again, and hopefully this does not go all grainy on us again. I wonder if it's the brush because I had it in the, you know what, let's try a different brush and let's not dip it in there. Let me dip it. Let me just get it wet with some normal water. All right, there we go. All right, we're gonna hope that this does not go all grainy on me. Nope, it did not. It stayed nice and smooth. So not real 100% sure why that other one did it, but we need this even a little thinner here. Alrighty, that's probably about right. Yep. Alright, so you can see we put in a bunch of this stuff. This is super thin now, but it's still really pigmented, so it shows up. Okay, all we want to do now is stick this in our airbrush, and then we will go to town here. We are going to use a little pipette here. And we're just going to take some of that. Oh, I think my pipette broke. Oh no. That's okay, I've got more. Life is good. Life is always better when you're painting, right, guys? Ah, I just knocked our guy over. I think he's fine though. This is where we're at for anybody who just started. We're about to airbrush oh, you know what? We missed a little thumbnail, guys. That's okay, I'll catch it later. We're about to airbrush the OSL effect and see how it goes. Alrighty. So all we need is a few drops of paint, guys. All right. Somebody's going to ask, what air pressure am I at? I have no idea because air pressure doesn't matter to me. When I say that air pressure doesn't matter to me, I mean the PSI doesn't matter to me. Because your model doesn't care about PSI really. Like your model doesn't really care at what PSI you're coming out. I thin to the consistency that I want, and then I use the lowest air pressure that I can get away with in order to spray the paint like I want it. Okay, so I have a valve on my airbrush right here that will control how much I do. If I turn it this way, I get full blast. If I turn it low, I get very little. So I'm going to be. Can you guys hear my compressor right now, by the way? Somebody tell me. I don't think you can. That's great. Oh my goodness, that makes me happy, guys. Okay, so I use the lowest air pressure that I can. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is, this is going to be hard because I do not normally spray like at this angle. All we're going to do is we're going to do short bursts. This is not a rattle can. Do not like hold this down in an area and just spray. What you're going to do is you're just going to do tap, 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 tap. Okay? And we're going to pull the trigger back just a little bit like that. Okay? We do not, I repeat, we do not want to hold this down. It will start to spider on us almost immediately. This is super thin paint, guys. Okay, so all we're going to do now is just going to come here and we're just going to build up this effect on him. All right, you can see already how we're starting to get a little bit of that. All right, now what we need to do is catch the top of this too. All right, we don't want it to look like that doesn't have any, so we're just coming around here. So you can see here, we're starting to catch that. We're just going nice and slow, guys. And we're always maintaining a position from where the light effect is. So you can see here, see what we've done there? We just added that real subtle glow. The trick is do not do it from any other angle than your light source. If you do it from another angle other than your light source, then you're going to screw it up fast. All right, let's see if we can drop the lights a little bit. It'll be easier to see this effect. And then we'll see if we need to do a little more. Alrighty. So you can see it here. What's weird is it's showing up much better in person. Okay. So we're going to go just a little bit more. All right, I'm going to guess that the main reason that we're not seeing it too much is the camera. But so yeah, so I think I'm going to leave it at that. I really don't want it to be too much stronger. And so now sometimes what I'll do, oh, we're out of paint in there. That's why it wasn't doing it anymore. Let me add a little bit more. All right, I'm adding just a little more paint in the brush. We're just testing it. All right, now remember, we just do short bursts. I'm just going to airbrush the light source itself and make sure that it's just nice and smooth. All righty. All right, so that's done. So the only thing left is the base and black lining. I add a little bit more here. Just trying to catch the top of the spear here. All righty. All righty. Well, now I got to clean the airbrush since I'm not really doing any more with the airbrush. If you're new in chat, feel free to say hi. If you're not, then see. There we go. So people can see it while I clean out the airbrush. This is the airbrush cleaner I use. This is like a mix of isopropyl alcohol, water, and Windex. It works really well. It's also stupid cheap to make, which is always, always, always a benefit. You do not want to leave any little bits of this Createx paint in your hey, sister brains, in your airbrush. It will coagulate, and then you will have a little bit of nightmare on your hands. So the other thing with your airbrush, paint will not dry if it is wet. That sounds like a stupid thing to say, but it is a very true thing to say. So when you are done cleaning your airbrush for the day, just take a little bit of cleaner or water, something, just drop it in there and just put it away with a little drop of that down in there. And as long as it doesn't evaporate, you know what? Not gonna get wet. All right, so let's do the base. All right, we're gonna switch to a brush we don't really care about, which is this guy. We're gonna bring our exposure back up like I want it. Okay. All right, guys. So that's that. And all right, so we got some rocks on the base. We have some logs on the base. So let's tackle. Like I said, we're going to use our skin tones and all of our different tones that we've used so far. We don't really want to add new colors onto the palette here for this, because it will make him look like he lives in the environment. Okay, but the good news is we got lots of colors to play with here. Let's see, we got this guy. Let's put some of this and some of this, and yeah, that's a good base for our ground. There we go. So all we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're just going to start doing these rocks here. See how easy that OSL, guys, was? Like, what was that, like 10 minutes? It was not long, guys. And the actual OSL effect was like bam, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, right? So all we're doing here is just putting down a color here. We're just trying to make sure we don't hit the feet. That's the main thing right now. If you do hit feet, guess what? Nobody's really looking at your feet. It's not the end of the world. If you hit a random foot that you didn't mean to hit, you know what you can do? Stick a grass tuft right by it. Oh, look, he happens to be stepping on grass. It also happens to be hiding a mistake that I did. Woo. So oops, sorry, I didn't realize I moved off camera there. All we're doing here is just going around hitting all the rocky kind of areas here. If you don't have an airbrush, how would you suggest doing? Yeah, mostly with glazes. Yeah, I would do it exactly like I just did it, but you're gonna have to be way more careful with glazes. Um, I have glazes, or actually, I might dry brush it. We'll see. I don't know. I'd have to. I haven't done it without it in a long time, because it's just so like, guys, like, honestly though, just get an airbrush. I know not everybody can though. You should, but alrighty. All right, so now all we're gonna do is we're just gonna start mixing lighter colors. I'm not gonna really pay attention too much to exactly what I'm doing here. Like I said, we just want to use colors on our palette so he looks like he lives in the world. So we're taking some of our skin tones, our ivories, our whatever, and we're just putting them down in big broad strokes right now. And just kind of, this is what I call just kind of defining the volumes. We're just make the lighter parts light, make the darker parts dark. You know, I hate, I, believe it or not, I actually really like dry brushing for a lot of things. I hate it on the ground and stuff like that because I think it looks super fake. Like, I feel like dry brush ground looks like dry brush ground. And so I pretty much never dry brush when I'm doing bases and stuff like that. So as you can see, this is going real fast here. All we're doing is we're just mixing in some colors, and the trick here is a big brush. Use the side of the brush and just build it up. Just cover a little less every time. We're basically doing a little wet blending is what we're doing. You know, take a little bit of this. Let's take a little bit of this green here. Ooh, that went green fast, didn't it? Let's put some of that in here. Yeah, we'll come back to that. No, just trying to make him look like he actually exists. We're going to use a little bit of this, his base skin tone here. We're just going to put some of these colors kind of down. Do, 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 do. All we're really trying to do, I got a little bit on his foot there, unfortunately. We might need to go touch that up in a bit. Painting bases. I actually like painting bases, kind of. Alrighty, we're going to come back over, grab some of this, some of these darker areas a little bit. What do we got? 14 people watch me do random stuff with brushes. I love it, guys. Okay. Alrighty, so now we need to start going brighter again. Let's take this guy. You'll notice I'm wiping my brush off a lot. I don't want this loaded with paint. This is, I believe this is a technique called scumbling. This is not dry brushing. This is way more paint than you would dry brush with. What I'm doing is I'm just using the side of the brush to just catch the edges. In my opinion, it looks way more natural than dry brushing for this. I use this technique a lot on stuff. I'll do skin this way sometimes, where we're just catching the edges of stuff. It actually works surprisingly well for that. The paint has to be fairly thick for that to work. Right, so you can see all we're doing is we're just trying to define stuff here a little bit. Give things some color. nobody's really going to be looking too much at this. We just want it to have a little bit of life. All right, now we're going to take just a teeny bit of our white. Remember, white is super opaque. We talked about this at the beginning. White is super opaque. A little bit goes a long way. And so even though it looks like I barely did anything, look at how much brighter that is. I took the teeniest bit of white. Alrighty, and then all we're doing right now is just catching the edges here. Alright, about the only thing I don't like is there's too much of a transition right there. So we'll just come back and we'll find a good mid-tone and we'll just tone that down a little bit. We'll come back, we'll give it a little bit more of this. We'll come back, some of this. Then we're going to give it just a little bit more definition. Alrighty, let's do the wood. We got a few options for the wood. Wood actually, I really like using skin tones and then going over with what is it? The ink from the word. Can't think of the word. Scale 75 has a wood ink. It looks really nice. And so that's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna kind of roughly define the wood here. We're just scumbling. We're going to take it up a little brighter, and then when we add that ink into it, it's going to really tone it all down. Wood is one of those things, I don't think I've ever done wood the same twice. I don't think I've ever used the same recipe twice. Like I said, I'm a big fan of using whatever's on your palette. You want him to look like he lives in the environment. Thanks, Crits for Cancer. Those guys are awesome. Anybody who is watching, go check out Crits for Cancer. They do live streaming. They're trying to get started. They're pretty new, I think. But anybody raising for cancer money, gotta love them. All right, we're gonna throw a little bit of greens in the wood here. That was a little too harsh, wasn't it? Dum dum dum. Let's change that up. Let's do a little bit of this. There we go. I'm gonna do a little bit of that. We're just trying to give this some multi-tonal stuff here. And then we'll bring it back up. Wood rarely is like one color. Like, you never see wood and you're like, man, that is nothing but one shade of brown. That just doesn't happen. So you can see I'm doing all this. I'm not cleaning my brush. I am not thinning my paint. We're just trying to get a bunch of different tones here to create some sort of natural environment here. Some texture. And then I think I'm good with this. And then we're going to take our ink, glaze over it, and then, guys, I think we're all done except for blacklining. I like it. Does everybody like it? Anybody not like it? Anybody like, what the heck is that? Why did we watch this? Anybody want me to explain why something is the way it is? All right, so scale 75, ink tense wood. You will 100% need to thin this down. If you do not thin this down, it will basically just change everything into like a brown mess. So you definitely want to thin that down. So you can see we took a little bit of water and just the tiniest bit of that stuff. And then all we're going to do is start laying that in there. Look at that. Suddenly it starts to look like wood. This is almost like a wash, but it tints a lot more than a wash. You could probably use a wash in the same way. To be honest, guys, I just don't have a lot of washes. I don't use a lot of washes. I'm not super loving that, but it's okay. I like a little more grays in it. I think if I was going to redo this, I'm mixing a little bit of gray in here. I like a little more grays in my wood. So we're just going to kind of wet blend a little bit of this. There we go. I'm liking that a little better. Okay, and then we're going to take some of this gray and how about some of this white? This light color here. Oh, that's okay. And then we're just going to catch some of these tips here. We're just trying to make the wood be less boring than wood and still look like he makes sense for being here, guys. Because the last thing we want to do is have it just be one shade of boring brown. We're just bringing up the highlights a little bit. The only thing I don't like about the wood ink, it dries pretty glossy. So what we'll need to do afterwards is just hit it with a little bit of matte. And he'll look great. He'll look right as rain. All right, guys, we are finishing up here. I'm going to call that good on the wood. I think it looks pretty wood-like, especially after it dries. And let's do a little bit of black lining. Oh, we got a little bit of clean up on aisle skin. Okay, so we're just going to take and we're going to catch any, oh man, I like butchered his skin over here. But you know what? This is somewhere that no one is ever going to look. If this was a competition piece, I would re-wet blend it, I'd re-glaze it, I would re-airbrush it. But on this guy, he's getting enough to make it not. There we go. Let's do a little bit here. Looks like I got a little bit under there. Again, nobody's ever looking at the bottom of this foot, so I'm not too worried. All right, guys. So the last thing to do is to line it. We're going to take our trusty #1 brush. You know what? Some of this wood ink actually works really well for some of the lining we're going to do where it's not super stark. We're just going to come in here. All we want to do is just add real subtle lines in a few places. Just make it not quite so bananas. Okay. Oops, sorry, I didn't realize I was off. Okay. We are wrapping up, guys. The end is in sight. What do you think? You like it? Don't like it? All right, I got a little too much ink there, but this ink takes a while to dry. I'm just taking some wet water and wiping it off. I highly recommend when you do something like lining, use something that gives you at least a little bit of working time. Like, you don't want something that will dry instantly, because otherwise you, as soon as you make a mistake, it's over, and that's no fun. All we're doing now, guys, is we're going through just adding a little bit of lining. Thanks, Mythos. So there's a Highlander character. Oh, forgot to paint his thumbnail, didn't we? I think we had something like these guys here, over here. We'll just take a little bit of this. A little bit of this. There we go. Thumbnail. All right, guys, we're just finishing up here. There's really not a lot more. So I'm about to wrap it up. If you guys have questions, now is the time. Blacking? Nope, that was I've used the wood ink about everywhere I want to use the wood ink. I'm going to switch to black. All right, guys, I am pretty much wrapped up here. I am going to close off the stream. It's been a pleasure painting with you guys. I don't think we had any major stream problems, I don't think. If you've got any questions about anything we did, feel free to send me a note afterwards. If you like this, feel free to drop a note on the page here and let me know. Let me know if there was something you didn't like, and we will figure it out from there. All right, thanks, guys.